Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today, we are looking at something I've wanted to talk about for a while. Also, with it being the holiday season, what better time? So, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, the quintessential holiday classic about the importance of the spirit of the season. It's also a story that is public domain and has been milked to death, and they're still milking that cow. So, in the year of 2022, there have been several hundred adaptations of this. Big screen, small screen, stage, and everything in between. But among all of those adaptations, one stands out as the worst. And we're going to talk about it today. I have wanted to do this for a while. So today, we are going to be talking about A Christmas Carol, the 2019 miniseries. Released in 2019, written by Stephen Knight and directed by Nick Murphy. Among others, this version of A Christmas Carol stars Guy Pearce as Ebenezer Scrooge, Vinette Robinson as Mary Cratchit, Andy Serkis as the Ghost of Christmas Past, and Stephen Graham as Jacob Marley. I am going to be talking a lot of spoilers about this, and so if you do not want to be spoiled and experience this for yourself, because here's the thing, I kind of morbidly recommend this. It's like watching a train wreck. You want to turn away, but you can't. And just the sheer, what's the word? This thing is an abomination. It is terrible, and just like the sheer awfulness of it truly needs to be experienced. In the US, it is available for streaming on Hulu. So make of that what you will. If you have Hulu, again, I kind of morbidly recommend it. It is so bizarre and bad. And a lot of it borders on so bad it's good. So, oh god, now, where do I want to start in talking about this? Well, let's get some more of the logistics out of the way. So, I believe this was a joint production between the US and the UK. In the UK, it aired over 3 nights. Episode 1 was on the 22nd, episode 2 aired on the 23rd, and episode 3 aired on the 24th on the BBC. In the US, it was edited into a single 3-hour feature and aired on FX. So that's kind of the first problem with this story, with this adaptation, is that it took a very short novel. In fact, it was a novella, and most movies, most adaptations can do the story in an hour and a half. Heck, Mickey Mouse did it in half an hour, and it makes it 3 hours. Now, before I start really breaking down what makes this version so terrible, let me kind of give you the rundown of the plot comparatively to the novel. So, I didn't time it exactly, but 3-hour feature, 3 episodes. Each episode is roughly an hour. Episode 1, the first half of that episode is all the setup, introducing Ebenezer Scrooge, his relationship with Bob Cratchit, his relationship with the rest of the town and the world, his feelings on Christmas. And then, after business for the day, he encounters Marley's ghost, who gives him the warning. And then, the second half of the episode is the Ghost of Christmas Past. And then episode 2 is the Ghost of Christmas Past. And then episode 3 is the Ghost of Christmas Present, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, Scrooge waking up with this revelation of wanting to be a better person. So that's the first big issue with this adaptation. The pacing is absolutely horrendous. Like, as I was sitting through this thing, so many times I was checking my watch, seeing where are we at, and then pausing to see, okay, how much is left? And this thing crawls at a snail's pace. It is torturously slow. So, that's more of a fault of just the miniseries itself, not so much the adaptation, but, we're going to get to that. So, is there anything else before I start breaking this thing down? Actually, yes. The direction is really good. That's one of the few things I will give this. The color palette, I when I do my Doctor Who reviews, I've kind of talked about that young adult thing that was kind of in a lot of movies in the mid 2000s, where it looks like a gray filter was applied over everything, so everything's very pale, very muted. Um, A Christmas Carol does this, but I feel like it actually works for A Christmas Carol, kind of setting up that Victorian sort of spooky ghost setting. So it's one time where it works, but really the true saving grace of this is the performances. The writing, the narrative, and the character decisions may be awful, but the performances really help this go a long way. And it almost makes this thing bearable. Guy Pearce gives a very nuanced, layered performance as Ebenezer Scrooge. As much as I love Guy Pearce, he is a really weird choice for the role. And it's like, what's a good comparison? It's like Paul Dano as the Riddler in The Batman. This version works for what this narrative is doing. Like, if you were to take this version of Scrooge out and put him in any other version of A Christmas Carol, that characterization and that performance simply wouldn't work. But for what this is, it works. Vinette Robinson is Bob Cratchit's wife. Mary Cratchit is really good. Fun fact, because I saw this last year for the first time. This was obviously right after I saw Doctor Who. So, we saw her phenomenal performance as Rosa Parks. So when I saw she was in this, I was really hyped, and she didn't disappoint. Andy Serkis is just delightful. You can tell he's, out of everyone in this cast, he's probably having the most fun just chewing all the scenery as the ghost of Christmas past, who for some reason looks like the ghost of Christmas present. And honestly, my favorite performance in this was actually Stephen Graham as Jacob Marley. This particular adaptation devotes a lot of time to Marley. Like, it kind of opens with him in the afterlife, unable to rest in peace because of what he's done. And, it goes into what he's doing, like why he's trying to help Scrooge. And it's honestly the best performance in the miniseries, and the stuff with Marley is the best part of it. I'm not gonna lie. And that's kind of the sad thing too. Like, this version of A Christmas Carol does do some interesting things. Like I said, the expansion on Marley's ghost, but a lot of it just feels wasted. Like, the ghost of Christmas present. We're gonna talk about that. So and like, I'm even tempted to call this an edgelord's Christmas Carol, just because it's so edgy, for lack of a better word. Like, when this was announced and before it got close to airing, like, the producers and the people behind the scenes were like, "Oh, A Christmas Carol's a ghost story. We wanted to go back to its spooky roots." Which kind of shows that this particular production of A Christmas Carol knows nothing about A Christmas Carol. That's the big hang up I have with this. It gets so much about A Christmas Carol so fundamentally wrong. So let's talk about Scrooge himself. Like I said, Guy Pearce gives a good performance, but let's talk about the ways that this version gets Scrooge wrong. Or actually, first, before we even do, I kind of just, because I've been thinking about this as I've been talking, and I just have nowhere else to put it. This is also the least loyal adaptation of the book, surprisingly, somehow. Because, even in more looser adaptations of the book, there were still those iconic lines that come up, then he should die and decrease the surplus population. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. God bless us, everyone. Nothing from the book made it into this adaptation. And that's just the surface level. Like, as we go on, we're going to talk about how far away this strays from the adaptation. Like, let's start off with the small fry. So, Scrooge's nephew, Fred, he comes in the beginning of the novel. He invites his uncle, his last living family member, to dine with him. And over the course of his journey, Scrooge realizes the importance of his family and how important Fred is as the last link to his departed sister. Not only as family, but, that Scrooge kind of did what his father did. How Scrooge's father kind of resented him for his mother dying in childbirth. Scrooge resented Fred for his sister dying in childbirth, delivering him. And, he comes to make peace with that and understands the importance of family. In the opening of this particular adaptation, Fred comes in and offers the invitation, and he says, you know what, I have tried this every year, so this is going to be my last invitation. If you decline, I'm done. I'm leaving. You'll never see me again. Scrooge declines, and we never see Fred again. When we get to the end, after Scrooge has had his revelation, he doesn't go to Fred's. Fred never shows up again. Wow. So, and we'll kind of use that to snowball into talking about Scrooge more. Excuse me. So, in Dickens's original novel, and most of the better adaptations, Scrooge is a miser. He's not a terrible person, he's just grumpy and miserable. He hates this holiday, and that's kind of it. And that's really the importance of the Ghost of Christmas Past segment of the novel, because, because what that segment does is it really shows us Scrooge is not an antagonist. It's meant to help the audience build empathy for Scrooge and understand why he has such a strong dislike for this holiday. And the Ghost of Christmas Past shows us that basically every bad thing that's ever happened in Scrooge's life happened at Christmas. It's a good way to show his origins, where he came from, and as I said, it's to give us empathy for Scrooge so we don't see him as a villain. This version of Scrooge is a monster. He does some pretty terrible things, and his origins are also really messed up in this version. Oh god, now since I'm talking about it, I don't even remember if this version does Belle and the whole lost love thing. But so, Scrooge in this adaptation is a moneylender, but he is an asset stripper. So he and Marley buy up failing businesses and turn them for profit. And one of the things they really hit you on the head on with this version is that Scrooge and Marley bought a mine, and to save money on this mine, they gave the miners shoddy equipment, and this equipment led to a mine collapse that killed thousands. This version of Scrooge is not just a grumpy miser. He has blood on his hands, and he just kind of brushes it off. And that's not even the worst thing he does. Oh my god. So remember how I said Mary Cratchit has an expanded role in this version? A role that kind of screws over Bob Cratchit now that the more I think about it, because yeah, Bob's role in this is very minute and doesn't really contribute much. So one of the things we see from the past, one of the things that in Pierce's performance Scrooge regrets doing is, without her husband knowing, Mary Cratchit comes to Scrooge behind Bob's back and asks for a loan. She explains how Tiny Tim is sick and they need extra money to pay for his health care. So after business hours, Scrooge makes Mary come to his house and basically says, "What are you willing to do for this extra money?" Now, Scrooge never makes her go through with it. I'm gonna let your mind fill in the blanks on this one. Just trigger warning. But yeah, it's vile. This version of Scrooge is not just grumpy or miserable. He is vile. Speaking of, another side note that I'm just gonna bring out, because I don't know where else to put it. This particular portrayal of Tiny Tim feels kind of ableist. You know, he doesn't just have a sickness of some sort and he's not crippled or handicapped. It feels ableist, you know, because I don't want to say any more because I feel like I'm the wrong person to talk about. Well, I am the wrong person to talk about this, and it's just anyone who has seen this miniseries and can comment on it. Would you agree with me on that, or am I overthinking this? That's the best thing I can think of to do. So let's move on, so I was kind of talking about how vile Scrooge is, and like that kind of ties, and you know, the fact I'm gonna be honest, he sexually assaulted Mary Cratchit. Again, trigger warning, I'm sorry. Even if he didn't make her go through with it, I'm pretty sure what he did can still be considered sexual assault. And then he blackmails Mary Cratchit, and tells her, if your husband ever tries to quit my employ, I will tell him about what happened here. Ugh. Look, I've said it before, this version of Scrooge isn't just a grumpy miser who hates Christmas. He is a vile, repugnant human being. And I've repeated myself so much, we're gonna stick a pin in Scrooge for a minute, because we're gonna talk about the ending as well. Oh, good God. And his origin is also really messed up. So, again, and more trigger warnings. I'm sorry about that, but I did say this is an Edgelord's Christmas Carol. So this is one of the places where that really comes into play. So we go to Scrooge's school days where, you know, Scrooge's father, resenting Scrooge for his mother's death, kept him there for the course of the year. In this version, Scrooge's schoolmaster was molesting him. What does this add? This contributes nothing. And really, in the miniseries, the way it doesn't lend itself to Scrooge being the person he is, thank God. It looks like it just traumatizes the poor man. Like, why show him this? This is completely irrelevant. And again, it's so edgy just for the sake of being edgy. And, okay. I feel like I'm starting to get incoherent and I'm starting to talk in circles, so let's move on. Let's talk about one of the other interesting ideas. Because like I said, one of the things I actually really liked about this miniseries was the expansion of Marley. Even though that's done kind of weird. So again, in the novel, Marley is a spirit because of his attitude in life. You know, I wear the chain I forged in life. He cannot move on because his actions left him chained to the earth. Because of what he did, he cannot move on to an afterlife, either paradise or damnation. He's stuck on earth, unable to provide the help he refused to give in life. In this version, we kind of see Marley go through hell, so to speak. Essentially, it's kind of weird. It doesn't really make sense. But, you know, essentially what he kind of comes to the realization, talking to the ghost of Christmas past, that if he can redeem Scrooge, Marley will be allowed to rest in peace. So there's kind of this weird selfishness in his motivations. But this is really what I like about Stephen Graham's performance as Marley. It comes across as kind of earnest. It's like, this is what happened to me. This is gonna happen to you too. So let's move on now to the Ghost of Christmas Present. You know, as I was saying, the expansion of Jacob Marley is one of the most interesting things this miniseries does. The Ghost of Christmas Present is also kind of interesting, but I feel like they kind of missed something here. Because the Ghost of Christmas Present is the ghost of Scrooge's sister, Fair Lottie. Yeah, this is something I don't get about some adaptations. Like, they'll change the names of characters, like Scrooge's sister Fan or his love interest Belle. I've seen a few adaptations that change Belle's name to Emily for no discernible reason. This miniseries does the same thing. It changes Fan's name to Lottie, and I just because is the only thing I can think of. And as I just said, she is the ghost of Christmas Present. Now that is something interesting. Like, I've seen one or two adaptations that make the ghost of Christmas Past Belle. I don't think any of them has ever made it Fan. What I'm getting at is that this is an interesting idea, but it would have made more sense if the ghost of Christmas Past if she was the ghost of Christmas Past. And that's kind of all you're gonna get, because that's all the time the miniseries devotes to the Ghost of Christmas Present segment. Except for the scene at the Cratchits, where Mary Cratchit can kind of sense that Scrooge and the ghost are there. It's really weird. This miniseries also seems to imply that for what Scrooge did to her, Mary herself summoned the ghosts to haunt him. And the ending implies that. It's bizarre. Like, if I have not gotten through to you how bizarrely awful this thing is, you just need to watch it and witness the train wreck for yourself. And now let's get to the most edgelord thing. I'm sorry, I can't. Let's get to the most edgelord thing about this adaptation. The Ghost of Christmas Present Yet to Come. I'm sorry. This may seem like a bit, but I'm not. Every time I think about this particular part, it's hysterical. So, it's weird because I feel like in other adaptations, The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is the easiest one to do. Like, a lot of people just oversimplify it to being the Grim Reaper, which makes a weird kind of sense because, the future always ends in death. But the versions that screw it up do so spectacularly. Like Geraldine Chaplin in A Christmas Carol the Musical, or this version. Like, his introduction is amazing. I'm sorry. I'm going to recount this because I don't have this available on DVD or anything, and I don't know if I did, I wouldn't know how to rip from it to insert clips. So, the Ghost of Christmas Present segment ends with Scrooge in a ruined church. He's sitting there reflecting on everything he's seen so far, while the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come approaches him, not as a hooded specter resembling the Grim Reaper, but as a tall man in a cloak and top hat with his mouth sewn shut. Presumably because no man can know the future. I'm grasping at straws. And as he's waiting for the ghost to show up, who is creeping up behind him in this ruined church? I do want to emphasize these are ruins. Scrooge recounts what Marley told him. The third ghost will make himself known when the clock strikes 3. And behind him, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come picks up the fallen bell from this ruined church and rings it 3 times before throwing it through a wall. And then he only shows him Tiny Tim's death, which is not sickness in this version. It's skating on a thin lake, falling through the ice and drowning. It's, again, just for when I said this thing was almost so bad it's good, a lot of it is the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Just, I feel like I've been asking this entire review and over the course of this entire adaptation, but what were they thinking? Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. It's just... And now, let's get to the ending. So, the ending. That famous scene where the ghost shows Scrooge his own grave after showing him a town who did not love him. And that's the big thing. I think that bad adaptations of A Christmas Carol get wrong. It's not that Scrooge dies, it's that he dies unloved. So Scrooge is sitting at his grave, and Marley's ghost shows up again. Which, again, is an interesting idea that kind of goes nowhere and is ruined by how terrible this adaptation is. So, Marley explains to him, it's like, so you've seen where you came from, where you are, and what's going to happen. Don't you think that's kind of a wake-up call? You kind of need to redeem yourself? And Scrooge flat out says, I refuse redemption. He goes on to say he's done so many horrible things that he feels like redemption is beyond him. That's the entire point of A Christmas Carol. Like, see, and this is where this adaptation really falls apart. And what I mean when I say I have never seen an adaptation of A Christmas Carol fundamentally not understand A Christmas Carol. Like, oh my God. And it's like, this thing almost kind of sequel baits at the end, Like, he wakes up a new man. He makes sure to condemn the frozen lake so Tim can't fall through and drown. And then he goes to the Cratchits and congratulates Bob on his new job. And, after kind of kicking him out of the house, rightfully so, Mary Cratchit says, I accept your apology, but I don't forgive you. And he says, I know. I don't want your forgiveness. I still have a long way to go. It kind of... And then, and again, like I kind of said, the ending kind of implies Mary Cratchit herself summoned the spirits. It's like, spirits, your work has only begun, or whatever it is. This thing is awful. Very, very... I've seen bad adaptations of A Christmas Carol, but it isn't even close. This is the absolute worst I have ever seen. If I'm going to watch A Christmas Carol every year, can I do this fast enough? Nah, never mind. I'm either going to watch the George C. Scott movie, or I'm going to watch Scrooge, the musical, with Albert Finney. Like, ugh. So, A Christmas Carol, the 2019 miniseries. Have you seen it? What are your thoughts on it? Is this the worst version of A Christmas Carol? What is your favorite adaptation of A Christmas Carol? And how many of you in the comments are going to say it's the Muppets? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.